Hey, good evening, everyone. Episode 4. I'm Marty Walser, also known as Raging Owlbear on social media. RagingOwlbear.blogspot.com is the blog. And I'm talking about Storm King Thunder. Last week, I didn't actually get to talk about the adventure that much. I got sort of cut off. Unfortunately, my son was a little bit ill, and hopefully that's all past us. Actually, now my daughter has it because it's going to go through the whole family. But we're going to talk about Goldenfields and Triboar tonight, but I am going to quickly touch upon a couple topics that I didn't quite get through last week. And one of them I started to talk about towards the end, but we're going to talk a little bit about streamlining your session to not waste time, especially if your group doesn't get together as regularly or have as an extended period of time to play. I'm going to talk about legacy weapons, which is a topic that I wrote about on the blog last week. I'm just going to do a brief overview on that. And then I'll talk a little bit about running large combats. Goldenfields and Triboar are on the topic list tonight. And those are both encounter combats that span, a large area. Goldenfields is huge, and you can have lots of different things happening in different places. Triboar is a little bit smaller, but at the same time, the scale of the encounter is still pretty much the entire town. So I'm just going to tell you what I kind of did for that, and maybe that'll help you when you get around to running those particular combats. So first, let's talk about streamlining your sessions or time wasters. One of the things that I started to talk about last week was, for those of us who don't get to game as often as we'd like, maybe we don't have a weekly game. We play every other week or, 3 times a month, maybe on a good month. And we're only, it's only in the evening for between 8 and midnight. If people can stay up that late, because, as you get older and you have lots of kids, it gets harder and harder every year to be that guy who's, we're going to play till 3 a.m. or 6 a.m. or, no. College is over. We're old. But as the game master, the dungeon master, as the game master, you want to be cognizant of that and try to push past sort of time wasters in the game. Shopping is a big one. Shopping always becomes 1 or 2 people at the table who are really into the whole shopping thing, and then the rest of the table is just like, can we please move on to the next thing? And you want to give those players their little bit of time, to talk to NPCs and stuff like that. And you want to develop NPC relationships, but you don't want to just spend a whole lot of time having a guy buy a scroll, or, I'm looking for a +1 sword. I don't know, whatever it is they're trying to get. If you don't have an adventure hook for that NPC that they may be talking to, then unless there's a really good reason, try to kind of sail past it. You can do maybe a short form role playing. I know a lot of people like, great. If your group is really hardcore role playing and they're like, yeah, we want to talk to all the shopkeepers and we do this, and they're into that game, then awesome. Yeah, that works great. But usually that's not what it is. Every time I'm at a table where there's shopping occurring, like I said, it's 1 or 2 people who are, trying to get the thing that they want or whatever, and they're wasting a lot of, they're talking to the shopkeepers and wasting a bit of time. And everybody else at the table, especially if you have a big group, 5 people, 6 people, they're like, oh God, man, I don't want to do an hour shopping. I only got like 3 hours of game time in me. I don't want to waste a third of it talking to NPCs in town unless it leads to somewhere in the story. So be cognizant of that. When the players come into town, they want to shop, try to do some of that offline if you can. Don't do it at the session. Do it in the Facebook group or an email, or do it through your electronic medium somehow prior to the session. Another thing is that if they're looking for something that may not exist in that town, decide beforehand or make a ruling on the fly whether that thing is in this town or not. So if they're in a small village and they're like, hey, we want a wizard because we need a 4th level spell scroll, and they're in a small village, it's not likely that there's a wizard high level enough to get that spell scroll. Just say no. Just be like, hey, this village is pretty small. Probably wouldn't be able to get a spell scroll here. But if you go up the road to the big city, go there. You might be able to find somebody. Similarly, if there's looking for a somewhat rare item, even when they're in the larger city, and they're saying, "Hey, I want to find this thing," don't roll investigation checks or other things streetwise, whatever your game is, to look for a shop or to look for a thing in the shop. That's just going to waste time. So you want to decide, yes, this town is big enough to support that particular need, or it's not, and make that ruling and sail past it. Don't spend a lot of time on rolls, investigation rolls, streetwise rolls, whatever it is you're needing to roll. Don't spend a lot of time on that, because again, that's just going to suck the air out of the session. Especially if they don't find it. If they roll crap and they're like, nope, sorry, that thing you wanted, you don't have it. Don't do that. Just try not to spend a lot of time on those types of situations. Make the decision that, yes, this item is, or this city is big enough that even an item like that could be found. Or if you're going to play it out, have them go to a shopkeeper who says, you know what? I don't have anything like that, but I'll bet you I know somebody you could talk to, or, give them some sort of adventure hook. Be like, hey, if you go talk to my buddy and so, go up to Fallcrest, go up to Yartar, go up someplace. There's a fence, inquire at the inn and use this passphrase, and then there's a fence that I know, and he kind of deals in antiquities, but don't ask if they fell off the back of a horse cart. Something like that. Give them something that sort of moves the storyline in a direction. Even if you have to improv something, because that's just way more interesting than shopping and saying, yep, or nope, they don't have that in this town, or just say, this town's too small to support that commerce, that level of commerce. But the next town up probably would. Or, just give them a spin price. Oh, you need a 2nd level scroll? Sure, 75 gold pieces. Let's move on. Don't haggle. Let's play out the haggling with the storekeep to save 5 gold pieces. It's gonna bother everybody at the table. Because it's D&D. We wanna fight stuff. We want to get into the story. We want to do stuff like that. So, just a bit of advice to keep things moving especially when game time is constrained. Okay, the next thing, legacy weapons, which I wrote about on the blog last week, and basically I wanted something. I like a lower magic campaign. I don't give out a lot of magic items, much to my players' disappointment. I want something. I want the items to kind of feel special when they get them. There's a lot of role playing games that, and a lot of even D&D play styles where people are just throwing out magic weapons left and right because you get a +1 at whatever 2nd level, 3rd level, you get a +2 at 6th level, you get a plus. Just you're constantly having to up the loot level as the characters climb in character level. And I didn't really want to do that. So I was trying to think of a good way to give the characters items that they would care about and not be too overpowering at lower levels, but would not become disposable at a higher level. So, I went back and looked at some ideas from previous editions, and in the third edition there's a whole book on something called legacy weapons. And I think this idea even existed before third edition, but they did a whole big thing on it during a third edition. It was a whole book. It had adventures, had other stuff like it. It was actually kind of a cool book, but it was a little bit too much. It was a little bit. They had all kinds of stuff about how do you unlock powers, and there's the weapons have their own sort of feats that they grant to the characters. It was really multi-layers, and I wanted something a little simpler. And so I just thought up, but the concept is good, and the concept is that you have an item that has some lore and history to it, and as you discover more and more about that lore and history, or as you do research or level up, the weapon unlocks. More power gets infused into the weapon, or a power that existed already in the weapon you've now figured out how to tap into as you gain levels and stuff like that. So, I really like this idea, and it's a great way to give somebody a +1 whatever, axe, mace, blah 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 blah, and then you tease them with something else. They're like, oh, there's something else about this weapon. You give it a name, maybe give it a short backstory or something. It doesn't have to be fancy, but if they bother to do some of the research on it, maybe they find out that, hey, there's something more. And so in my case, I gave one of my players what I'm calling the Mace of Winter, and it's just a +1 mace, but once per combat or something like that, short rest, long rest, whatever recharge value you want to give to it, they can activate a little extra charge in it that gives a little extra damage. So necrotic and cold, it's the Mace of Winter, coincidental to the Ring of Winter. I named it, I gave it to them well before we actually started playing Storm King's Thunder, but so no relation. But I just called it the Mace of Winter because it's cold and necrotic. You hit somebody and they get frostbite, whatever. So at first it was like just a small boost. It was like a D4, and they could use it once per combat or whatever. Recharges over short rest. They get one extra little D4 of damage. So it was just a nice little thing. And then as they leveled up, I said, hey, you know what? Now it does 2D4. You've sort of figured out how to channel the energy into the mace, and now you get 2D4 and stuff like that. And so they're gonna my player will slowly discover that there's more to this mace than maybe they first thought. And they haven't. I give my players hooks about lore a lot, and a lot of times they just absolutely ignore them. It's to their detriment, I should say. So if your DM is doing this, if they're throwing out lore hints, that maybe they're trying to give you something. So pay attention to those, because again, I'm giving out lore hints. I've given out a few different lore hints along the way that meant that they could find something. And especially I'm starting to introduce the giant runes in Storm King's Thunder. And they found a rod that has a giant rune inscribed upon it. But it's not active. It has a slight aura of magic, but they haven't figured out how to utilize it or sort of get it recharged or something like that. So I'm throwing these hints out there for them to sort of bite onto and be like, hey, you got something. There's this rune. It has some sort of magic attached to it. Without saying you should do the research, I'm trying to give them a hint. Hey, by the way, go consult a sage. Go talk to a wizard. Find somebody who can help you with this. And they haven't done it yet. They just like, throw it in the bag. Moving on. And that's not entirely true. They haven't completely forgotten about it. But, those are the types of things that as a player, I'm like, ooh, that there's a clue in that, or there's something that we need to figure out about that. Let's go find somebody to talk to. And so I haven't actually introduced Zephyrus in the campaign yet because I didn't like the way he was written in the book. So I'm actually sort of slow rolling him into a later, more important scene. And if they haven't done any research on the runes yet, I'll probably introduce that concept to them through Zephyrus. Like, oh, hey, yeah, these are giant runes of power, and you can do things with this, you know. You can imbue your weapons with the magic in these runes, or you can whatever, you know. I haven't figured out I'm not going to use them exactly as they are in the book, so I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do about that. But you know, that does tie back into the legacy weapon thing. It's like, oh yeah, you can use the rune to add some other power to your weapon, and so that way they're not finding that +1 sword and then 2 levels later or 3 levels later throwing it away. Be like, I don't need that anymore. I got a +2 or something. You know, I want that item to be evergreen and have meaning, and they could use that same magic sword that they found at 4th level and still be using it at 14th level, ideally, and maybe they've added more things to it. They've charged it up. They've unlocked its other abilities or potential. Or, you know, that it's a person, maybe it's a personal sort of like monk's key power. The more you use that weapon, the more your personal energy is now imbuing it into more magical, you know, power. And so I want to add some extra flavor like that. And so I'm working on that. Goldenfields and Triboar. Okay, so the next topic, which I'm going to talk a little bit about is both Goldenfields and Triboar are large combats in the sense of they cover a broad area. And I put the map away. Hold on. I need to grab the map. Sorry about that pause. Actually, I'll probably edit that out. So one of the things I did with Triboar especially, you know, there's a couple different methods for running these big combats, is that you obviously have to bring some of that theater of the mind into the game, even if you play on the grid all the time. You know, you're going to have to, for these large combats, you're not going to have a battle map big enough. There could be things that are happening in very distant places. So you're going to have to do, you know, there's the one thing is sort of these zoom in and zoom out combats, which you kind of run theater of the mind. You say, okay, these things are happening over here. And maybe a couple of your party members go to investigate that. And then you have a couple of party members over here. And you don't have to necessarily play the grid. You can just say, you know, okay, so-and-so you meet, there's 3 orcs and a magman, or, you know, whatever. There's these guys attacking over here. What are you going to do? And then describe it all theater of the mind. Describe the scene. You know, maybe you have a map of Goldenfields, like an overall map, and you just say, hey, this is the area you're in. And you can see there's these fields here and there's these buildings over here. And, you know, just give them a generalized description and say, and let them describe what they want to do and play it like that, you know, almost wholly theater of the mind, very, very few visuals, except for the fact that you have a map and you try to describe the terrain and the things. And then if you really need to, yeah, quickly sketch out something. You know, here's the lane that goes between the cornfield and the wheat field, and here's a farmer house that's right here, and here's, you know, just like do a real quick battle map, and then you could do something on the map there, you know, nothing big, just real localized, and then jump over to this combat and do the same thing, zooming in and zooming out. You can also use techniques that games like 13th Age use, where you're not on the grid, but you just say, this guy is in melee range, he's in short ranged weapon range, long range weapon range, and outer range, as an example. So, and then you can just say it takes 1 turn to move a range increment closer or further away from your enemy, as an example. So you could even have not a grid, but like boxes, and basically say, move the foes closer or further away to your characters based on the box. Outer range, long range, short range, melee. And then, as they move closer, represent them by moving from one box to the next box. So, again, that gets a little bit, you have to throw out some of the range mechanics, not throw them out, but modify the range mechanics for that style of combat, because your longbow guys are going to be like, well, I can shoot a guy that's like 300 yards away or whatever. You got to be like, you know what, for this combat we're doing long range, medium range, melee. What, you say we're playing abstract. There's a lot of things going on in the map, so you're not shooting at guys that are going to be like way far away from you, because there's people that are closer in. So we're just going to say there's the short, spear and javelin sort of melee range distance, and then the bow distance, and keep it very abstract. And so you just say in relation to where they are, how far away the enemies are. So again, you're playing theater of the mind, but you're giving them a little bit of idea of relative distance. Oh, can I run up to that guy and hit him? Yep, he's only one range increment away from you. So you allows you to move from one end range increment. You are in melee, you are in short range, ranged. I need another word. In near range, and you want to move into melee. Yep, that's no problem. That's one turn, and you can close with that guy. If that guy's in long range, it's gonna take you 2 turns to close. You're gonna have to close to short range, because he's long range currently. Close once, short range, close again, melee, that sort of thing. And so we did that kind of combat actually in Goldenfields. We did a little zoom in and zoom out. I did some sort of strictly on the grid, and then we did a little bit of zoom in and zoom out, and I did it again in Triboar. We had sort of range finders, like this is how far they are. And so one of the actual other things I did is I took the Triboar map, a scan of the Triboar map, and I overlaid a grid on it and made each like little 1/4 inch or whatever. It wasn't quite a 1 inch, but what I did is I made these little small squares were like 25 feet. And then, the larger squares are like 100. So I made it so that I had these larger overlay on the town. And let me show you, I printed it out really big. I took this software. Well, I did some of the changes in GIMP, which is a Photoshop-like tool. And then I took another piece of software that will chop up that large format image that you've created and chop it up into, single page pieces so that you can kind of tape them together. You print it out across 6, 7, 8 pages, and then you tape the thing together. So this is what I ended up with, is this large Triboar map. And you can see I overlaid these little large grids with smaller subgrids. And basically these large grids ended up being something like roughly 100 feet. So this showed, oh, you're 100 feet away, 200 feet away, 300 feet away, whatever. And then the smaller ranges were like 20 feet or 25 feet, or roughly speaking. I mean, I was being relatively rough, but I tried to make it close to what the map key was, what the actual legend was in terms of distance, which you can't see because it got cut off at the bottom here. But and then what I did is I just took little markers. I had little, meeples, for lack of a better word. I had small markers that I could use to represent the PCs in several different colors. I also had these little gems that are just as little plastic, toy gems or whatever. And I just put them down on the table, put the gem or the little meeple or whatever small representation on the grid to show this is where your character is, so because there's all the buildings in the center of town, and basically each space was one movement. Each small space was a single move. If they did a double move, I let them move like 2 of those little spaces because they're, like I said, they're about 20, 25 feet, roughly speaking. And that worked pretty good. Because everybody knew where they were. They were like, oh, I'm going over these houses over here. It could also let the party sort of spread out without I mean, the party was sort of split, so to speak, but they were still in the same scene, even though they could be, 200-300 feet apart from each other. They were still within the same scene, and I could kind of play it out. And then I could also show on the map, hey, you got a group of orcs coming in this way. You got these guys coming in this way. And then, you could have the giants march in or whatnot. So everybody had a pretty good idea from a large tactical perspective where things were coming in. And so it actually kind of worked. So we weren't entirely theater of the mind. There was still a little bit of a grid, and I had an idea of where every person was. But again, they weren't in melee range. They were doing a lot of bow shot and spells and whatnot, which I'll get to in a minute too, about running Triboar, because they teed up on the bad guys. But I'll talk about that in just a minute. But it actually worked really well. I actually liked this sort of methodology for some of the larger towns or other places, because I did these little spaces were 20 to 25 feet. It was easy to calculate moves, because it's just, I basically said, hey, one move is one square. If you do a dash action, then you can do two squares, something like that. And then just kind of fudged the rest of it. So it's still kind of theater of the mind, but they really had a good visual representation of where they were, what was going on in the town. If there were buildings on fire, which I'd start to draw on the map. It worked out really great. And this was, like I said, I just printed this out on various pieces of paper and then taped them together. Cut the margins off, and then taped the pieces of paper together. You probably can't see it in the back, but yeah, so you can. But that worked. I thought it worked really nice. It made the combat, and I would put the actual, even though they were using the little meeples, so the little small markers to mark where their minis were, and I had markers for the giants and other things like that. I put the minis along the edge of the map in the direction that those creatures are coming in, so they can see a visual representation of the minis, like on the edge of the map, where, okay, this group is coming in here, and they would see, oh, there's freaking 2 fire giants there, and they got 6 orcs with them, and then there's another group of orcs over here, and they got magmen and whatever, and so I positioned them around the map, and then I had the little markers for, like a little gem for a PC, and a slightly bigger gem for a giant or some other creature or something like that. So, and you can do the same thing with other small things like meeples from your board games and stuff like that. So I just scrounged up little, things that I could throw that were small enough to put in those little grid spaces. And it worked out nicely. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the things I learned from that combat as well. But that gives you an idea about running those larger combats, and then sometimes, like I said, I'm in my last episode, I talked about drawing up Groodhog to scale. So I have a 6-foot long piece of gaming paper. I mean, it was the my Christmas wrapping / gaming paper. I rolled out a 6-foot long piece of this, 40 inches wide, 6 feet long, and I drew up Groodhog, the top level, and have it on a big table. For the next combat, I thought they were going to hit it this week. Actually, they did find it this week. But I'll talk about that in a future episode. We'll see how that turns out, because they're a little gun shy. They found it. The hobgoblin sounded the alarm, and then they kind of ran away and said, we need to figure out what we're going to do or how we're going to get in. But that's for a future episode. So getting back to Triboar and Goldenfields. So let's start with Goldenfields. Goldenfields, unlike Triboar, isn't like a one huge combat, because there's lots of smaller skirmishes. Because you have several groups of invaders, like there's 3 groups inside Goldenfields, and there's some groups outside of Goldenfields, and depending on how you want to play, you could add more inside and, you know, whatnot. On the DM's Guild, there is, I'll link to a resource. There is a pretty good Goldenfields guide, which you can put together yourself. It's not, you know, when you read through all the Goldenfields, if you take notes about who is where, you know, there are, you know, it tells you there's 3 different groups, the eye biters and the teeth footers and the, you know, whatever, shoe fitters. I don't even remember what the names are, but they had there's 3 skirmish groups, and it kind of tells you where they start out and where they're moving to. So you could sort of map that out in a timeline. You could say, okay, these guys are here at this time, and, you know, a couple minutes later they're here, you know, and so that way you could plan the PC movements and where their movements are. And so as they engage one group, you could say, okay, while they're engaging this group, this other group is moving over here. You know, you kind of plan some of that out. But there is a guide out there that kind of has done all that for you. It's taken all the notes and said, hey, this is the only way you can run it, but here I've created a script for you, basically. And it's a good guide. I got it, I read it, and I used a lot of it. I didn't use it exactly as written, but it was helpful because it just meant it was that much less prep time that I had to do, you know, or it gave me ideas for how I might handle things. So I'll link that in the notes on the blog and in the channel. And so Goldenfields is pretty straight up normal combat, because again, you know, there's the 3 groups, and you can decide based upon where your characters are which group they're going to engage. You know, I kind of had them come into the Goldenfields. They talked with a few of the NPCs. It's interesting because there's actually kind of a lot to see, so to speak, in Goldenfields. There's a couple different shops. There's a few different NPCs. But you have to kind of really put them in front of the characters. You have to really kind of get those NPCs front and center to get the people to, you know, meet with them and say, okay, I know who that person is. And sometimes they bypass all that. Like my players coming into town, I said it was in the late afternoon or early evening. Sun hadn't set yet, but, you know, they were coming into town. They had to do a delivery, so I had them go to the abbot because they were supposed to be delivering these contracts. And then they went to the inn and stuff like that. And so I tried to do a thing at the gatehouse where they talked to some people at the gatehouse. I had them talk to some people at the abbot, and then had some talk to people at the inn. So I tried to get as many NPCs in front of them as much as possible to see if they would, you know, make a connection to somebody. And, you know, and I'm teasing them out things about those NPCs. And then of course the attack happens. Now, this is actually key. And the book does suggest this, but I wasn't sure how it would work or not. Give the players each an NPC to run along with their character. And it helps if they're in the same place, obviously. Like if some of the characters are over here and the abbot's there and the wizard or Zelang or whatever, you know, give them the ones that are adjacent to their characters. And if these guys are over in the inn, okay, then these guys get the innkeeper guy, the halfling, you know, bard wannabe, and, you know, maybe the other guy. But the point is, give each player, not just their character, but the NPC to run. And I got to tell you, that went over really, really well. I had introduced the NPCs. They had a little bit of conversations with them. But again, in Storm King's Thunder, the difficulty with this adventure is so many NPCs walk onto the stage, have a very quick scene with the players, you know, maybe 10 minutes dialogue at best, and then walk off and you never see them again. So I really wanted to create a reason for the players to give a damn about these people. Because, I mean, that's one of the biggest difficulties in D&D is you especially if you have a lot of faces that come through. You know, and the random NPC number 1, random NPC number 2, random NPC number 3. They don't remember the names. They don't remember why they were important to the story. So if you give them the thing about giving them somebody to play, one of the NPCs to play during the attack, they loved that. That hooked them in. That hooked them in hard. So do it. Definitely do it. I don't, I can't remember if the books just suggested as a possibility, but it worked great. My players really enjoyed that. And they read here's the thing. Check all the characters because there are some spoilers in their descriptions. So I made copies out of the book and I sharpied over stuff that they should know, It's like, oh, so-and-so is a Harper agent. Well, maybe you've told them that person is a Harper agent, but maybe they're not supposed to know that. So you got to proofread anything that you Xerox copy out of the book and redact the stuff that they're not supposed to know. It's like, oh, this guy's a Zentrum spy, and it says right there, Zentrum spy. Like, all right. So I didn't even give him out. He was one of the people that was on the sidelines because I didn't want to give out all the NPCs. I just gave out one per player. I had a 6-person group, so that was actually a lot. They had a lot of people to play with. They had their characters, and they had 6 the NPCs. So it made for a really big group. But then a couple of the extra NPCs, I just didn't give out. I played them on the side. I said, oh, that guy ran back to the tavern, or he ran over to sound so he ran to the abbot so they could ring the bell, sound the alarm. Hey, the place is under attack. So I had them do stuff off stage. But anyways, the treant guy, or the awakened tree, and Goldenfields, people loved him. The spellcaster, she was a big hit. And even a couple of the wimpy weak guys, the guys who were just, the spellcaster has some power. The treant, the awakened tree guy has some power. But there, a couple of the NPCs really aren't that great. They're pretty squishy. But my players tried to play them heroic, but not so insane that they would go out, run out, and get themselves killed. Except in one scene, there's one of the NPCs I guess it was actually in Triboar. He's like, oh, he wants to be known as a hero. He aspires to be an adventurer, something like that. That guy got slaughtered because he went out and took on some orcs because he was like, because the player decided, well, I'm going to play him the way he's written. He was written up. I want to be a hero. I want to be recognized for my valor and stuff like that. And he just got slaughtered right away. So whatever. It was a kind of a humorous moment. Not that he got slaughtered, but that the player was definitely like, yeah, I'm going to play him the way that the book says to play him. Is that he's going to take chances because he wants to be known as a hero, and then he paid the price. So anyways, the way we ended up playing the Goldenfields thing, I had the enemies attack in the evening, so after the day was done, but before everybody went to bed. It's like there's a couple ways you could play. You could say, hey, they attack like late in the night, because they have dark vision and they want to take the place unawares. But I was just like, these giants are dumb. They're just like, yeah, I'm going to jump the wall and run around. And so I had them actually attack in the evening when the sun had already gone down, so it was dark, but there were still people out and about. And I did that a little bit to ramp up the danger for the villagers. Because, the tree man, the awakened tree, is playing with the kids in the village. So, it's the end of the day, it's after dinner. Maybe the kids aren't in bed yet, or some of them are out past their bedtime because they're out playing with the tree. Hey, the talking tree, we're going to go play with the talking tree. And so that was a good tension builder because I had kids, and then the hobgoblins or the orcs or whatever, one of the groups was coming in, and the tree had to stand between the kids and the enemies. And so my PCs, one group of the PCs is like, we got to help out the kids because, we don't want, obviously, kids to die. It's a very touchy subject, especially among parents. Know your party. I mean, like, know their personalities outside of the game because you got to, make sure you don't get into too sensitive of an area. But yeah, so I even had a couple of the hobgoblins wherever they scoop up the kids and they're trying to run off with the kids, and of course that set the PCs off immediately. They went, oh, we got to get that guy. So it built a lot of tension. It worked out pretty well, and I wasn't gonna go kill children. That's not what my game's like. But I wanted to make it seem dangerous, and so I had a couple of them scoop up the kids, and so they chased them down. And then while the tree was kind of stomping on other people, he was just stomping orcs and hobgoblins and whatnot. And then I had ogres harassing these other people over here. And so it was good because I kind of tried to spread the party out to make a lot of different threats so that they couldn't concentrate their fires much. They would have to spread to try to manage the different threats that were going on within Goldenfields. But I actually cut it short. They ended up engaging 2 of the 3 bands. I didn't want to bring in the 3rd band because after a certain point in the combat, it was just like, okay, we're going to fight more hobgoblins or more goblins or more. And I was just like, it had become kind of a long combat, and we had a lot of different things are going on, and they had enjoyed that, but I didn't want it to drag out. So I made the 3rd group realize that the 3rd group was coming in, realized that the first 2 groups had kind of been slaughtered by the players, and so they booked it back towards the outside wall, and the players hunted down some of them. So I had them do kind of a mini chase, so to speak. So some of them got out, and then the players hunted down some of them, and so that was that session. And then the next session I had the remaining ogres and whatnot outside the walls harassing caravans as they came in, or travelers as they're coming in. So then the next session I had a nice combat at the wall. We're at the gatehouse now, and we got people coming up the road, and the remaining ogres and stuff like that are now attacking the people out on the road. So the players had to run out of Goldenfields because now the Goldenfields defenses were on full, shields up. There was nothing going to happen in the inside anymore. So I had to kind of pull them out on the outside, and that worked out well. They captured Lob or Og or one of the dudes. But I will have to say I had some difficulties with capturing the Hill Giant. And here's why. You capture the Hill Giant. So yeah, the Hill Giants surrender. They actually killed one of them. The other guy surrenders. So they're like, okay, well, he surrendered. My players are actually try to play merciful. We have a paladin who's, a lawful paladin. We have a cleric also, a lawful cleric, or at least neutral good, whatever. So the ogre surrenders, and they interrogate him, and then they get some information. They say, oh, yep, we're collecting food for goo. I get them the hooks they need, stuff like that. But now they have an ogre, and they're like, okay, lead us back to this place, to goo, to Grudog. But again, at that point in the adventure, and even in the book, it says Lob and Og can't find their way back. So if they capture one of these guys or both these guys or whatever, they can never find Grudog. And so now you've got this situation. Your characters have captured the Hill Giant. They've shown mercy. And they're like, okay, now we'll let you go or whatever. We'll, if you give us the information, if you lead us there. And even in the book, it says, hey, it leads them around for 3-4 days. But after a certain point, the party realizes that they're walking in circles and stuff like that. So then what do? You got the ogre, you got the giant, doesn't know his way home. He's obstinate to the party. He threatens the party. Sometimes, even says, oh, he'll beat you up if you piss him off. So they're trying to be merciful and keep him alive, but basically the book is pushing you as a game master to make your characters kill this creature. So I'll be honest, I didn't know what to do with that, because I wanted to give them the hooks. I needed them to get the interrogation out of the hill giant, but they were trying to play their characters faithfully, and the paladin and the cleric showed mercy. But then you end up just pissing off the party because you wander around the wilderness for several days on this wild goose chase. So, I kind of played it. They wandered around. They realized that he didn't know where he was going. And then he got obstinate and, started to attack the party. So I gave him an out. I said, you know what? He's just getting pissy because he's dumb and he's mad that you guys are pushing him around, and he thinks you're little people. So he's going to try to smash you, og smash. Brr. Okay. Now we have a reason to kill him again after we've taken him captive. So I even had a conversation with my group about it afterwards, because I told them, look, I wasn't even sure. I just let them know. As the DM, I wasn't sure where I was going to go with it. And he was a hindrance because he wasn't going to take them where they needed to go, but they didn't want to necessarily just kill him out of hand, just execute him. So, I gave him a reason to then kill him. I gave him a combat in-game reason. I think they had even talked about bringing him back to Goldenfields and letting the authorities deal with him there, which, they were just going to kill him anyways. But I decided, let's not waste time. Again, we don't have a lot of gaming time. We only game 2-3 times a month. So let's get past this. Fine. Yep. Kill the hill giant. You don't know where there's somebody named Goo who's telling people to go get supplies. And that they're at a place called Groothog. And a couple of my characters luckily speak giant. So they knew what that translated to, like river house or lake house or whatever, rough translation it gives in the book. So they did have the clues. And that worked out well. But again, I was not satisfied by the taking the hill giants prisoner and then still having to kill them anyways. I mean, they're hill giants. Morality is black and white in D&D. But it just wasn't a satisfactory ending because I had to wander them around the wilderness for half the session before it kind of came to a head, and that felt like kind of a waste of time. And so but I was open with my players about it after the game. I was like, look, this is kind of how it was described in the adventure, and I tried to play off of it. I tried to improv off of it a little bit, but again, I wasn't wholly satisfied with the way it ended. But they were fine with it. I mean, they get it. I have a good group, and we work well. We have a good give and take on sort of the story narrative stuff. All right, so let's get past Goldenfields. It's getting super. This broadcast is actually a little bit longer than I intended. So let's talk about Triboar. Sorry, something that Dungeon Bastard said during his talking about Storm King. He always called it Triboar. That's sort of a thing. So here's the thing about Triboar. If you have really good ranged characters, and my guys actually had already leveled up to level 6 because I brought them into Storm King's Thunder late in the game. Started the adventure with them already powered up a little bit. They were like 6th level by the time they did the Triboar stuff, because I did Goldenfields. I had them wander around a bit. They had already been 5th level for a while. They did Goldenfields. They wandered around. And then I added a Triboar hook that was different from the book. Got them to go there. And did it where And I got some of these ideas from other people like Tom Lommel on the net, and there's a couple other, from the Storm King's Thunder group on Facebook and other stuff like that. But basically, there's a festival at Triboar. They're going in that direction anyways because they're headed towards Yartur. And so they come into Triboar, and basically they end up talking to, and they've made a reputation for themselves. They've kind of become a known group. They're 5th, 6th level now. They've helped out a lot of people. The Lord's Alliance knows who they are, because they have a patron from within the Lord's Alliance. So they got to Triboar, and Meltimer Meltimer is like, yeah, you guys can help me out. Can you be like my constabulary? I don't have enough people. There's all kinds of people going to be coming in town for the festival. There's going to be a lot of influx of tourists. Basically, there's it was not really a festival, but a horse show, a horse and cattle, so livestock trading, but also games and stuff like that. So it was a livestock fair with entertainment. And so they're like, a lot of people are going to come in town to trade their animals. This is the big sale of the spring, whatever. People sell their foals, they sell their calves, all the baby animals, whatnot. So there's going to be a lot of people here. Can you help me out with security? And there's always that meta that like, they're like, oh, I smell a Avenger hook. We're getting hired by the local constabulary to help them out. Gee, I wonder if something's going to happen. So you can't avoid that meta game. It's D&D. Somebody hires you to do something, that it's not gonna be like, okay, you got hired as guards and nothing happens. No, of course you're getting hired as the local constables as help. Then something's gonna happen, and of course it's the fire giants. But so I had them again try to meet some people in town, make connections. I gave them a smaller map of the town, not the big. I didn't introduce the big map yet, but I have this on a single page, just so they could look at, oh, what's this over here, and ask questions. So what shops are over here? Who lives over here? Just kind of get to know the town several days before the festival's about to happen. And so where was I going? The attack. So they got to know what was going on, and then I did the whole thing where, just like in the book, it says, hey, there's an attack on one part of the town, and so the riders, the main constable force, goes off to find out what the diversion is. But again, that's just the diversion. So now all of the militia those that are in the militia that's in town, the 12 riders, whatever you want to call them, they run off. And Urgla is just like, hey, you guys hang out here in town. My guys are going to go take care of that issue. That's not your job. Your job is to stay here and run security and make sure that anybody who's here yet before the festival, anybody who's gotten here before the festival, and everything's copacetic. And then, of course, that's when the fire giants come in. And the one mistake, I don't want to say mistake, but I have some players who are good at range in my group. We've 2 guys with sharpshooter feet, ranger who's going with bows, a rogue who's gone with bows, some spellcasters who have good range spells. So I don't really have that many toe-to-toe melee guys. I have the paladin. And I wanted to give him something too, because obviously the range people are just teeing up. So I had one group of the orcs and the magmen coming in this way, and then the fire giants coming in this way. But they beat the crap out of them. Actually, that's not entirely fair. Some of the stuff did start coming into town, and a couple houses ended up getting on fire, but it was not as challenging as I thought it was going to be. They put down a lot of the guys at range, We did our one melee guy did run up. He joined forces with the dwarven smith, and the two of them were bashing on people while the range guys were fighting people. And so they took out a lot of the orc forces pretty quickly. So when the fire giants kind of came in behind, they started to focus their fire right on the giants right away. So I don't think I didn't plan the timing quite right on that. It should have been a true diversion where while they were really distracted on the orcs, the fire giants just like run in. So they beat up the giants pretty bad. I had the magmen did set some fires, but those guys are pretty weak too. They go down relatively soon. So the few of the houses on the outskirts of town got burnt. But yeah, all in all, they repelled the fire giant invasion pretty easily because there were 6 level and I have 6 players, so it's a lot of firepower. I should have probably added a 3rd giant. But there's a couple things that you can do, and this is where I wanted to get to. If you're running this scenario, if you notice, the west side of town in Triboar has all of those trees. And this is key, because if you have people that have like the sharpshooter feat, you have a lot of good range. They'll be able to shoot through cover a lot of times because of sharpshooter. But keep in mind that concealment, the sharpshooter does not defeat concealment. So if you have your enemies coming through this forested section, you can say, you know what, you can't really see them. They're there because you can hear them coming. But there's a lot of trees. It's not just cover. It's like you can't see. They're way over there, and there's a whole freaking woods between you and them. So they're not going to be able to shoot that creature when it's still 300 yards out, 400 yards out, whatever, as it's trying to close into town. So that's the first thing. The fire giants, I should have had them come in from the west side, kind of come through the trees with the magmen, because the other thing that would have caused is that you have the woods now are starting to blaze up. Another person suggested on Facebook, when they ran the encounter, they had the giants set fire to the trees like torches and then throw the flaming trees into the center of town, which I got to tell you, I wish I had thought of that. That's a fantastic idea, because you just think about it. These huge burning trees come tumbling in. So your players are going to take, possible damage from just the giant logs getting thrown at them. And then it's going to start setting stuff on fire. It's going to cause all kinds of mayhem, which is really what it should kind of be, is that this is a serious attack that's coming in, and these fire giants want to cause a lot of distraction so they can try to get in and get their objective. So I didn't do that, but so I did have the magmen kind of run in and try to start fires, and then the guys engaged those guys. I had the orcs come in from the other side, but basically the fire giants never made it all the way into town. They never made it to where the artifact lies to try to start digging it up. Or if they did, they couldn't hang out for very long, because again, once they start getting beat up, once they start losing like half their hit points, they say they retreat, because they're thoughtful, they're intelligent creatures. They run off. So I had them run off, and they had the magmen continue to create mayhem in town as cover for them, skedaddling. So the giants left. And I was like, you guys aren't going to be able to catch them on foot, because, they're giants. They can just start trucking. So the characters repelled the invasion, but what I wanted to do is I still wanted to use those giants. I didn't want it to be over, because and this is an idea I stole from the Dungeon Bastard, from his podcast about Storm King's Thunder, Tom Lommel. He he had his giants retreated as well, and he set up a they're going to hole up in this cave system, and that's kind of what I did too. So I kind of took his idea whole scale. I made some modifications, but I had the giants as they left town. There's some of those outlying farms that are marked on the map. You know, a couple of there's a fallen orc ranch and this ranch and that ranch, whatever. So as the giants were leaving, they're like, you know what, we're gonna take some prisoners. So they bust down a couple of these ranches on the outskirts of town and take these families back to these caves that they have in the that they know about in the distance, where they were kind of doing their sortie from. They're using as a cave as a base of operations or whatnot. So yeah, they take these prisoners, they go back to the caves, and Urgla Meltimer, you know, says, "Hey, okay, I'm gonna raise the militia. We can go try to get these giants, but we can't get into the caves. You know, it's a funnel. If we try to bum rush into the caves to get these giants, you know, they're just going to slaughter my people, as they're going to slaughter the militia as they try to run in. Because the only way to fight the giants is to get them out in the open, so that all my bow, you know, if I have 50 bowmen, those giants are going down, but they have to come out. They have to get out in the open. So it was up to the PCs. And of course, the other thing is you don't want the hostages to be killed. So they're like, there's two things. We want to get rid of the giants, but we need to get those hostages out of there. So there was a reconnaissance mission that the players had to go and find the back door, basically, get in the caves and see if they could rescue the hostages. And I got to tell you, it went really badly for the players. Actually, the whole thing fell apart. But the mission itself was super fun. Was really, really good, actually. And again, I stole these ideas straight from Tom Lommel and his podcast, Videocast, because it was great. I mean, he had such a wonderful idea that I had to play it. So, you know, I had a couple giants back there in the caves. They still had some orc reinforcements and the magmen. And they were basically making sure that nobody could come in the front entrance of the cave. You know, it was well guarded, and anybody that tried to, you know, force their way in was just going to die a terrible, terrible death. So it was a standoff. It was a Mexican standoff, so to speak. And the players had to infiltrate through basically a back door. So I set up the idea of them getting in this cave system through the back. And they had to sneak around. So I actually created this huge terrain piece. I did the whole cave system in little HeroScape tiles. I'll put a picture on the blog because it was great. Actually, there's some video on my YouTube channel of that particular setup that I did because I just put it out on my new table. I just got a gaming table as a gift from my in-laws, and so I set up the thing on the gaming table, and I had all the HeroScape terrain, which is there's stackable hexes, so you can create some 3D elements on it. And so, you know, I had a level up here, and then you step down, and you go down. I had lots of ups and downs and stuff like that. It looked, I mean, you know, pat myself on the back. Yeah, it looked great. And the players they were psyched. They saw it and they're like, oh, this is cool. There's something really cool here. So they snuck in the back door. They had to kill some creatures that were living in the caves, in the back of the caves, without alerting the fire giants that something was going on. And then they had to basically sneak around and try to get the prisoners outside. So I set up a place where the prisoners were being kept, the little holding area. But I set up some places where if the players investigated, they'd kind of see down, you know, because I had levels, it was a cavern, they could see down into the main area, they could see where the prisoners were. So there's a lot of opportunity to use stealth and come up with a good plan to get the prisoners in a place where the giants, it's a cave system, so the giants can only be in the large rooms. I made sure that there were smaller rooms that the giants wouldn't be able to get to. So if the players played smart, they could get these hostages into one of these smaller rooms and use the choke points, that was the plan. Well, that was the plan that I thought they would take. And I tried to give them all the information they needed to know that if they just got this hostages out and into these little small rooms, that the giants weren't going to be able to follow them, that they'd be able to then sort of at their leisure focus fire on the smaller creatures that would come in, and then, deplete the giants' resources. And then once the hostages are safe, then they can use the sending spell or whatever to tell the people on the outside, if you have the capability of doing your assault now, we can get them from two sides. We'll assault from the back, you assault from the front. Boom, giants dead, no problem. So that didn't happen, but it was a good session because they were setting up an ambush to pull the orc guards off of the hostages, but they were not properly stealthy about it. As a matter of fact, what I ended up doing is they set up the ambush, and then because they couldn't speak to each other, because they had to be quiet, I had them all write down what their action was going to be in those first couple rounds. Like, okay, when the crap starts to hit the fan, tell me what your first action is, and then we play it normally. But I wanted them to not use any metagaming with each other because they had to be quiet in the cave system. So they discussed what they were going to do, and then I said, okay, when the plan activates, write down your action. So I had them all write down their action, and I read them all. And the mage said the mage's action was, when the orcs come through this one passageway, I'm going to cast Thunderwave on them. And I didn't do the "Are you sure?" but I did say, "Did you read the spell description and everything? Are you good with that?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's what my character is going to do." I was like, okay. So yeah, the stuff started happening. They cast Thunderwave. The whole cave knew something was up, and the giants started coming in and killing the hostages. And it was a bad scene. And the PCs had to run in to try to save the hostages, and then they just got beat down, and it was terrible. But anyways, they ended up having to essentially surrender to the fire giants and give them in exchange for the hostages' lives and the PCs' lives. They said, you can have the town said, take the artifact, take it, go whatever, dig it up, and go take it, and let my people go, so to speak. So I didn't make it a TPK. It could have turned into a TPK pretty quickly. It went south super, super fast, but I didn't want to just destroy the campaign right there and then. So I made the decision that the Giants' objective was more important to them than doing the beatdown on these, because the Giants knew that if they just killed all the hostages, they had no bargaining chip. They wanted the artifact that was in Triboar. So if they killed everybody, that doesn't get them closer to their goal. The town still has its umpteen hundred of militia, and they have no artifact. So they took the PCs prisoners. They had the hostages, a few of which had died at that point, but they had hostages. They had the PCs, and they said, "Give us the artifact, and you can have these guys back." And so that's what they did. They got the artifact, and they left. And the looks on the faces of my players were pretty. It was a hard defeat. It was a hard defeat, and I even felt a little bad, but it really, really made the stakes super high. It made a really great ending for that session. So we did the Triboar one week, we did the caves the next week, and that plot arc had a lot of not just character investment in it, but the players got really invested in that plot arc because of the way the events rolled out. So even though it was a major defeat for them as a group, it was really the first big defeat they took. They'd never really gotten a beat down. They had handled everything so far through 5th level without any problems. And now they're feeling like, oh man, we're getting like 6th level. We can handle anything these days. And I beat them down. And they beat themselves, really. Honestly, they could have gotten out. But it raised the stakes in the campaign, and it made the Fire Giant arc. It put the Fire Giant arc right in the forefront because they know the Giants are looking for these artifacts. The Cloud Giants did the thing in Nightstone, and the Fire Giants did this thing, and so it invested them pretty hard into the storyline. So it turned out, even though they got beat up, and it was a near TPK, it turned out to be a great moment for the campaign as a whole. So I was really pleased with that, actually, just because of that emotional investment that the players now have on that story. So yeah, that's that tells you a little bit about what was going on in my game. And again, the key to getting the Fire Giants into town in Triboar when you're playing that is not just cover, but the concealment. If they're coming through the trees, they can't be seen. There's too many trees in the way. And as a DM, I have no problem making that ruling. Because if there's 100 trees in those woods, I don't care if you have sharpshooter or not, you can't shoot through all those trees. You do not have a clear line of sight to those enemies coming through the woods until they get closer in. So same with buildings, make sure that if things are coming into town, they're coming in a direction that they can get behind buildings. They can do stuff, use concealment as much as possible. Not just cover, but full cover, so to speak, which sharpshooter just can't defeat. And so that way you can get all the creatures. If you get them closer in, you'll have a little bit better battle because my guys have so much good range combat that if I put those guys, the enemies, too far outside of town, it was too easy for them to just pew 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 pew. It's like, oh, I get extra attacks, and I've got the bow, and I got sharpshooter, and I have advantage, and whatever. They were just kicking way too much butt. So it was good that the second encounter was so hard compared to the first encounter because they felt like they really handled the first one like, oh, no sweat. Look at us. We just sent a couple Fire Giants packing. They ran away. And then they got beat down the next week. So that's it for Goldenfields and Triboar. This was a long episode, so I hope you were able to stay to the end. I hope you get something good out of it for your running Goldenfields and Triboar. I did not run any of the Bryn Chandor stuff. I've just decided that I'm kind of skipping almost all of the Frost Giant stuff. They're focused on the Hill Giants. I've got them hooked with the Fire Giants, and they're probably going to try to do something with the Cloud Giants too. So I've got so many of the threads going that I've kind of left the Frost Giants alone because the Frost Giants are so far in the north away from where they are. I just tell them there's things happening over there. They know that there's stuff going on. They can't tackle it all. And I've told them, I was like, you're going to have to pick and choose, and things are going to happen in other places while you're doing things here, and you can't save everybody. And that, I think that helps too. Actually, that's my last little bit of advice for running your game, not just the Storm King's Thunder, but in other things, is that try to have multiple things going on at once, and they're not going to wait for the party to act on them. You can create a timeline of some of your different little arcs and say the PCs don't handle this, this next thing's going to happen, and then this next thing's going to happen. So you can give them 2 or 3 different things, and they can resolve this one. But you have to decide, if they don't resolve this one in a timely manner, does the villain succeed? Or, you know, there are other people out there who are trying to thwart, who may be trying to thwart the, you could have a rival adventuring party. You could have Lord's Alliance, the Harpers, whatever. There's other stuff going on. And so if you have these things that are happening in the background and there are consequences to those things, even, and maybe not terrible consequences, but, you know, other stuff is happening. So they followed this plot line, and the meanwhile, this city got destroyed because they couldn't go up and save these people because they were working on this spot. That makes the world feel alive. You know, there's things going on outside of their little bubble. And that gives a realism to the game, a verisimilitude. I know a lot of people hate that word, but I think it's a good one, because you want your game world to feel alive to your players, to feel not like the video games where the NPCs stand around in town and do nothing until the players walk up and interact with them. You know, there's other plot arcs moving in the background that may not ever involve the PCs, or they could. You know, again, you're throwing out the hooks, and they're going to pick the ones that they want. But the ones that they don't pick, resolve them somehow. Either say somebody else stopped it, and so therefore it was okay, because there's another adventuring party out there. There's the heroes of so and so, or the Silvery Moon chick, what's her name, or the, you know, the king of whatever, Cormier, however, wherever, somebody came along and helped out. So they can find out about it. They can hear about it from, oh, a rumor in the tavern. Oh yeah, did you hear there was a big undead attack in, you know, Neverwinter? Like, oh, really? What happened there? Oh, well, yeah, you know, somebody raised all the bodies from the graveyard and tried to march them in the city, and blah 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 blah. You know, there's the Lich thing going on. There's like things happening over there, but they can't focus on that because they're fighting the giants. You know, there's too many things. Don't make that thing too interesting, because maybe they're like, screw the giants. That sounds like more fun. You're like, damn it, I bought this $50 hardback, or, you know, maybe I got it on Amazon, so it's only $30. But the point is, I bought this hardback. You guys can't go running off on all the side quests. You got to stick to the storyline. Be that as it may. Anyways, it's late. I've gone on too long. Have fun. Goldenfields and Triboar can be a lot of fun if you play with the scenario a little bit. And then I'll get to the next steps after that, what my party has done, and hopefully some other advice. So have a good time, and I'll see you next week.